Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to present the paper. The title is The Relationship Between Information Technology Capability and Organizational Environment Performance, a conceptual framework. There are two co-authors for this paper, Mr. Darius and myself, Ferry G from School of Business, IT and Logistics, RMIT University, Australia. There are six outlines for this presentation. The first one is introductions, related literature review, organization performance, environment performance, IT capability, proposed framework and proposition, discussion and future research. The importance of environmental performance in organizations. Currently, we have two particular information technology is what they use for improving the organization performance, environment performance. The limitation of research has been done in investigating the relationship between IT capability and organizational environment performance. Based on the literature review, the organization environment performance, the reflection of the nature resources consumed, the waste produced, the initiative and action of organization for reducing consumption of natural resources and the impact of each operation on the environment. Based on IT capability, we're looking at the ability of organization in effectively and efficiently using IT resources to improve their organizational environment performance. Right, so this is the previous studies on organization environment performance. Looking at three environment performance measurements. First one is ecological efficiencies. There are two indicators based on ecological efficiency. The first one, economical and energy efficiencies. This is the research have been done, the authors, co-authors, and second measurements, we're looking at ecological profile. And the first, we're looking at environmental vision and strategy based on these previous co-authors. Environment governance structure, the reflection of organization capability and efforts in managing matters, including training, legal requirement, resource allocation, documentations. Interestingly, we're looking at ecological initiative. That's not many research have been done in particular this area. The indicators we're looking at the level of organization spending compared with the average environmental spending of the industry, the development of environment awareness programs, as well as the level of recognition of environmental sustainability. Okay, so the next, the IT capability, the three we're looking at here. First one is IT infrastructures. The proposed dimension we're looking at is shared capability, service, and flexibility. This particular IT infrastructures, quite a lot of have been done so far since 1991. Then IT human resources, looking at the technical skills and managerial skills. This is important for any types of organization. Make sure all skills have been performed on different level and on human resource level. And also IT management, we look at three dimensions. In IT management point of view, we look at strategy, tactical, and operational processes. That's based on co-authors previous studies have been done. Then we're looking at IT capability, organization, environment performance. Darius and myself as co-authors for this paper, we're looking at what theories based on IT capabilities, methodology, and the use of information technologies. So when we look at here, institution theory and resource-based theory, the green information system life cycles, say for example, 2010, and then we look at IT capabilities, we look at IT infrastructures and then human resources, yes, and then we're looking at the methodology as well. And look at the use of IT, isn't it? Ecological, what I mentioned before, as the indicators, isn't it? Yes. And then this is great literature review. We look at IT capability and organizational environment performance. Then after we look at the extensive literature review, we come up with the proposed model for this research, this paper. The proposed framework and propositions. I mentioned already in previous presentation, I mentioned IT infrastructures, IT human resources, and IT management. Each has dimensions, and then to influence the organization environment performance includes ecological efficiency, profiles, and initiatives. This is the conceptual framework. Actually, of course, will be tested or investigated actually in the next step. This is pretty much for conceptual framework and propositions. And then I just want to explain each in terms of shared capability. Based on King 1991, the efficiency of the IT infrastructure interlinkage in providing homogeneous services in organizations. So there are two parameters under shared capability, reach and range. Reach, it means that the location that can be connected through the infrastructure from local workstation and computers in one department to another for reducing energy consumption and operational cost. Whereas range determines the level of functionality, say for example information and transaction processing that can be shared automatically and seamlessly across each level of the reach to minimize human intervention for efficient business operations. The shared capability can reduce the energy consumption and then the level of CO2 emission from each business operation inside and outside the organizations. So based on this, we come up with the first hypothesis proposition, hypothesis statement. The shared capability of IT infrastructure can be leveraged to improve the organizational environmental performance. Okay, so service capability. In order to fulfill the organizational business demand that focus on the efficiency of business activities, that we need to have a service capability, which is identified from the range of services and the kind of services. So range of services is classified into three different layers, including the entire organization, business units or business function, or geographical area or regions. Kind of IT services consists of application infrastructure, communication management, and also data management. The service capability has the impact on reducing the operational cost in business operations through the use of data center, also the internet function based on 2009 study. So by looking at this, extensive literature review, we come up with the second hypothesis statement. Proposition: the service capability of IT infrastructure can be leveraged to improve the organizational environmental performance. And the next, we look at flexibility. Flexibility is quite common in the management disciplines or in generic definitions, but based on information technology point of view, flexibility, what we look at, the ability of IT infrastructure to enable the organization to adapt to the changing environment. So based on Duncan 1995. The flexibility is determined by technical flexibility as well as the managerial flexibility. So what is a technical and flexibility? Technical flexibility is ability to integrate structure of the software, hardware platform in organizational business operations. Whereas the managerial flexibility is the ability of IT infrastructure that is related to refine or re-engineer business operation to adapt to any types of different changes in direction of organizational strategies. So the flexibility can transform organizational business operation efficiently and effectively through renewing and redeploying the IT resources based on published and 2009. So therefore, we have the third hypothesis statement. The flexibility of IT infrastructure whether it can be leveraged to improve the organizational environmental performance. In addition to 4 and 5, the hypothesis statement, we look at technical and managerial skills under IT human resources can be utilized to assist the organization for improving the environmental performance by their technical and managerial skills. A lot of research have been done so far, but based on particular previous study, we were looking at whether the technical skill of IT human resources can be leveraged to improve the organization environment performance. Furthermore, the manager skills, IT human resources can be leveraged to improve the organizational environment performance. So those two, what I mentioned, that definition also in the slide and in the paper. Then strategic process. Strategic process, the purpose is to achieve the objective of an organization in long-term and the vision of IT functions and the business overall. The strategic process is determined by setting goals and identifying appropriate action steps. So first of all, we look at setting goals, refer to goal of organization that will be used as a reference for improving their environmental performance. To identify appropriate actions, refer to requirements, time frame, cost, IT infrastructures, human resources management, possible constraint in order to achieve the goal of organizations. So, what is the goal and objective strategic process in overall? In overall, we can say that the strategic process able to assist organization to accommodate in developing ecological profiles in organization based on laws 2011. So, hence we have the six hypotheses. The sixth hypothesis, the strategic process of IT management is positively related to improvement of the organizational environment performance. And then we have a tactical process. Tactical process involves all the activities because that's a tactical point of view. It's not strategic process that are required to achieve the goal of strategic plan in organization. As we know in the strategic management, we look at strategic and we look at tactical and operational, isn't it? And therefore, tactical process is important to support strategic plan in any types of organizations. So, tactical process is determined by allocating and arranging the IT resources. What does it mean, allocating, arranging IT resources? It means that we employ to distribute the IT human resources and IT infrastructure in appropriate combination to implement the strategic process. In addition, based on ONETI 2011, that's recent published, has been done by ONETI, the tactical process needed for design, integrated business process to contribute, whether can influence or improve environmental performance, including ecological initiatives. So, number 7 hypothesis we're looking at is the technical process of IT management is positively related to improvement of the organizational environmental performance. And the next, I would like to start with the operational process, which is, after strategic, and then we have technical, and then we have operational process. What does it mean, operational process? It refers to activities and actions which should be performed to maintain organizational level of performance on business operations. Operational process is determined by leading and controlling. What does it mean, leading? Leading involves building commitment, encouraging work efforts that support goal or objective. Controlling in operational process, it means that a process of gathering, interpreting performance feedback as a basis for constructive action and change, such as monitoring performance, comparing results to goals, and taking corrective actions. So, in order to improve environmental performance perspective, the activities in the operational process should be aligned and monitor business process itself. That will be enabled to improve environmental performance. So, number 8 hypothesis based on our conceptual framework here is the operational process of IT management is positively related to improvement of the organizational environmental performance. So now I just want to talk very brief about discussion, but everyone can look at very details in the paper. The discussions, organizational environmental performance can be improved by the use of IT capability, including IT infrastructures, IT human resources, and IT management. As you can see, we got extensive literature review, and you can read in the paper very details, across different authors mentioned about 3 different dimensions. for the IT infrastructure, IT human resources, and IT management. So IT infrastructure can be used for as follows: connecting and sharing organizational resources, providing numerous of features and services including communication and automations, adapting the changing environment including business environments. Based on IT human resources can utilize their skills, including technical and managerial skills, to improve environmental performance in organization. Say, for example, IT human resources, in order to improve the skills, managerial and technical skills, it must be integrated. People in organization need to know how to use their particular software or hardware in order to use particular equipment or IT to improve the environmental performance, isn't it? So that human resources based on this framework is very essential to see whether technical, managerial skill, capability or competence of the people in organization, whether they can improve environmental performance. And furthermore, IT management, okay, in terms of contributions, this research contributes in providing concept of framework. So at this moment, we have well-established concept of framework of the relationship between IT capability, organization, and environmental performance to assist all academic people and practitioners, in particular, or government body or different type of stakeholders, to identify, to understand how IT capability is utilized to improve environmental performance in organizations. Secondly, the research also provides practitioners, different types of stakeholders in organization with a guideline in assisting the decision making when they utilize IT capability for improving environmental performance. So in particular, ICT organization or IT companies in Indonesia, say for example like Telkom, and whether they can be taking into account whether this research can be fruitful and very helpful for as a guideline to assist for the decision making. And finally, this research is used by an organization to comply the regulatory requirements. So that's the contributions. So in other words, contribution for this paper, there are two types of contribution. The first contributions can be useful for to the body of knowledge. And then secondly, this contribution of this paper useful for practitioners, in other words. And then what is the next? We have a future research. The future research will be useful for this particular research will be done for the next for the futures. Potential research can be conducted to use the different types of IT capability utilized for improving environmental performance. It also can be created by identifying the factors driving and inhibiting the use of IT capability influence in improving environmental performance. Say, for example, we look at sustainability or possibly a green, particular technology actually to improve the environmental performance. And number three, the future research, we need to test, or we look at the empirical research to test the concept of framework in particular context, say for example in Indonesia context. So currently we propose for the ethics to get ethics clearance, and then we start collecting the data for that's a future research and to test the concept of framework. Thank you very much for listening, and we would like to forward to receiving your feedback and comments. Thank you.
Thank you.